Okay, is that right buttoned on?
Awesome. All right, we'll do warm-up question, a really simple one that I always do, which is let's start with your name and your credentials. And when I say about your credentials, I know team you're playing for currently, maybe your esports, your podcast. Let's go through those things
Yeah, I
too.
won't do that. Yeah, g'day guys. My name is Mitch Robinson. I currently play for the Brisbane Lions in the AFL. I also dabble in podcasting. I have my own podcast called Rip Through It. I kind of started that to be able to give players a voice. Well, as we know, the media can sometimes twist what stories are being told. So, give them that platform that I'm really passionate about. And obviously, I dabble in esports as well. So, I'm a professional gamer on the side and I play Call of Duty, and I've represented some organisations in Fortnite. But that's for kids now. So, I kind of try to grow up and play another game. So,
Perfect, mate. Actually, I got your bio before, so we'll get into the real questions soon. But this is more of an interesting one and a warm-up one.
mm-hmm.
I can see the background. You got one jersey up there, so you hail from Tassie, right?
Yeah, I'm Taswegian.
Yeah. So I always ask this question. It's a curious question. Tassie doesn't have a professional team, does it, for AFL or
Nah.
for any?
We're about to get an NBL team called the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers, which is an interesting name. The Jack Jumpers, I don't know if many of mainlanders know what it is, but they're like kind of like bull ants. They're pretty aggressive. So if you trot on them when you're a child, or you put your hand in a nest, you'd walk around with a lot of bite marks and swelling. So I guess they're going for that aggressive mindset. But no, AFL, we've got one of the oldest AFL teams in the country in terms of like when it was played in the early 1900s and stuff, late 1800s. So unfortunately, we don't have a team, but we sponsor the Hawthorn and North Melbourne, so they play their home games down there in some parts of the season. So I guess that's a good compromise.
Seems like they're missing a big trick in that. Tassie gets
Yeah,
ripped off, in my opinion.
it does for footy because they venture that they expand teams that they go to places where there isn't much AFL. Obviously, New South Wales and Queensland where it's predominantly rugby league and union. So they try and target those areas. All Tasmanians already watch AFL. It's the number one sport down there. So viewer wise, they already got those eyes on TV. So they're not going to make much more money out of that. So tourism does really well from AFL games coming down there, and that's where we kind of we're okay with that. But I think down the path we're going to kind of try and get our own team and lure some big names down there. So that's where we're going to go down that path, I reckon.
Home must be pretty close to your heart because you got that.
Oh, I've got it tatted all over me. I'm massive passionate Tasmanian, so it's a touchy subject.
Nice. All right. Well, cool. So let's tell us about Rip Through. What's it all about?
Yeah, so I started Rip Through a podcast with a close friend of mine, Sean Tobin. He's got his own media company with Gary Ablett Jr. So that kind of went hand in hand together. About I've been through personal issues with the media itself in terms of having they can portray a personality to sometimes what it isn't. So I started the Rip Through a podcast to keep journalists accountable in that regards and making sure that they tell the truth in stories and write the facts, not just what sells in, not being the first, but being a factual. So that's why I started the podcast, eventuating to doing interviews with athletes and AFL players, and it grew a success over that, being, kind of original and being an OG podcaster. So I'm really enjoying that, and it's a good passion for me to take my mind off footy as well. So when I finish footy for the day, I can put all my efforts and energy into the podcast, and that's something that post footy I would love to do. But obviously, right now I'm still playing, so I've kind of have to tread water with some of the things I can talk about, and I don't want to give away the club's IP or in meetings and touch on other clubs which I don't want to use, give them ammunition to play better against us or to target me on field too. So it's a fine line tread, but I'm getting used to it. So I'm looking forward to when I retire and be able to speak my mind 100%.
Very cool.
Mm.
Was there anything that made you want to become like a podcast producer, a host? What was the thinking behind it?
It was more so that I'm opinionated, but having someone that's inside the game who can also actually know what they're talking about. A lot of the current commentators and the players that are doing the commentary now are kind of have been out of the game for a while. So having a fresh eyes and a young opinion. Well, I'm 31, not that young, but a player who's currently in the AFL having an opinion on the sport and the rules and what's happening in the media at the time. So that's kind of what I want to do, because I was seeing a lot of articles have been written about players and other people within the game that weren't quite accurate, and the players didn't get a chance to speak for themselves or have their side of the story told, because the people that are writing stuff about them or talking about them are the ones that will be interviewing them and, you know, kind of ask those questions that are kind of, you know, misleading or that kind of way. So I'm non-biased. I'm a player, so I look after players. We do call it the People's Podcast, the Players Podcast. So that's where we try and err on that side of the respect of, you know, getting their story out and letting them have a voice for themselves. So that's what kind of wanted me to do it, and I think that's where I get my credibility from in telling those sides of stories.
I don't know why a podcast though. I mean, there's vlogs, there's blogs, there's a whole bunch of things, podcastings, a popular format. But is there something particular that drew you to the medium?
Yeah, I love writing articles. So I've studied sports journalism, so that's my passion as well. I love doing articles on things I'm passionate about. I can't write articles on stuff that I don't really care about the topic, because it doesn't interest me and doesn't bring out what I really want to portray. So when I'm talking to someone in person, I find that's my best trait. I know how to communicate with people, and talking in front of a camera or in front of a microphone doesn't faze me at all. So being able to do face-to-face value and understand the mood in the room and try and get them to feel comfortable and talk about what they really actually want to talk about, not just giving the old straight bat answer that they've been told to give. Something that I really enjoy trying to get out of people, and just enjoy that communication we can have with another player. So that's something that I've really enjoyed doing. Last year I took a lot of time off the podcast because of COVID. I don't like necessarily doing it over a webcam. I don't like that kind of contact because it just doesn't feel natural for me. So I waited until obviously the COVID relaxation kind of came in and the guidelines, and we could actually get out and interview people again. So that's where I started back up this year, and I've really enjoyed doing it, and I wouldn't be able to possible without doing without Shure microphones, because and just them in general, like the way they've helped me out in my podcast has been from a novice to trying to get to a professional level. Getting the best in the business and the best equipment is what I've yearned for, and that's why I can do what I'm doing now.
Carry on. Can I just make a note, sorry, about the question being weaved into the answer? Are you happy with the current format?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay.
We'll just thanks for that. It's actually just a good reminder. We'll keep framing it in like you are. And if you don't, if something's really good and I need it, I'll come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, did you actually know anyone who produced a podcast before you went into it? Or did you have any prior knowledge as to what you were going to do when you went into it?
Not at all. I didn't really have any background in podcasting per se, but I've been a gamer and I've been around a lot of tech since I was, 7 or 8 years of age. Around that, computers and audio, and I've been streaming for about 3 years now. So that kind of elapsed into podcasting, and I've done it all off my own back. Purchased all the equipment that I needed. I've been looked after by Shure Audio, who've been huge in that factor of me being able to get the best quality in the mics and that kind of stuff. So I didn't have any background besides YouTube, probably setting up a few things and understanding audio mixes and the levels and syncing the camera audio to the microphone audio. All that kind of stuff really took its toll, and I really enjoyed understanding and getting it perfect and making sure everything's in sync, and then getting people on and making sure that runs smooth, because once you start interviewing people, a lot of things can go wrong, and it's all like adapting and learning and making sure you can get better. And that correlates into my my professional football ability as well. Like, you've got to make sure that you're getting the best out of yourself, and the product you put in front of people, you want to make it look like the best in the business. So that's kind of where that goes hand in hand, I guess.
Yeah. Podcasting in the last 12 months, and I was like,
yeah,
just like podcast, another podcast, another podcast.
Yeah.
So much white noise. What separates a really good crafted podcaster
Yeah. Yeah, what I guess during the COVID time, you did see a lot of people want to have an opinion. And I saw a lot of that on Instagram Live, a lot of athletes trying to interview other people, and it just didn't feel generic, didn't feel genuine. I'll start again. During the COVID period, obviously a lot of people wanted to have an opinion on things, and it was a great time to try and do that and see if anyone was good at it. If you had a passion for it down the track, or you wanted to do in media or commentary or anything of those likes of life, it's probably the time to do it. So I don't have a bad thing to say about them trying, but yes, I did see a lot of people trying to do the podcast game, and it's not as easy as it sounds about just flicking on a camera, flicking on a mixer, and away you go. It's got to be genuine, and you got to want to be able to do it and do it right. So I've always spoken about this. You see a lot of people pop up, but they won't last long if they don't really have a passion for it. I know there's a handful of people that I know in the community who have been doing it for a few years now, and they build that fan base, a community. They might have thousands and thousands of followers on Instagram and social media, but when they're talking in front of a camera and interviewing people, it's a whole different ball game. So there's a couple of people I know, Dylan Friends, Dylan Buckley, he's been probably one of the first guys who's tried to do this, and I was along the ride with him, and we bounced ideas off each other, and we talked to each other about the podcast game, and it's kind of good to have him there who's been around for a while, and he's really upping his game with that kind of stuff. So yeah, they come and go. It's funny, you see that they all started last year and they're not doing it now, so it doesn't worry me. You can tell who's good at it and who's not, but no, it's one of those things that you just adapt and get better at.
What are your plans for Rip Through It, and how are you looking at overtaking Joe Rogan as number one?
I don't think he ever could. I'm pretty sure he's got a lot of money backing him, but his story is amazing, and obviously his personality is out of this world, as he probably thinks it is too. Like some of the theories he has and the guests he have on probably aren't right up my alley. But in terms of sports podcasts, there's a lot of people do it right overseas in America, and I think they do it the best as well. Big fan of Brendan Schaub, who does UFC type commentary and podcasts, and obviously Mike Tyson. Those guys who you wouldn't think would be good at it, but they shine and they know their product they're talking about. It's not just having personal opinions on everything. It's about selected things, stuff you've been through in your life, and that's what I think I'm really good in terms of the AFL, because I've had all the highs and lows in AFL. I played 6 years at the Blues, played a few finals, and got delisted for off-field indiscretions, and learned from that. And now I've got 7 years up here, silver lining, love Brisbane. Got the podcast to find a hobby, and it's a passion and something I want to do post-footy. But in terms of growing it, I really want, once I finish, retire, I'd love to be on a network or turn into a radio segment or anything along those lines to keep getting other athletes' opinions out there in the open. So that's something for mine. It's going to be passion. I'm going to do it regardless of if it's going to make me money or not. I'm just going to keep doing it and telling stories of other athletes and I guess like celebrity figures or whoever's out there who wants to be interviewed. So that's something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm going to continue to do it till I'm old.
It's cool what you're doing. The player's voice is important, and it's very rarely given a free platform to be heard on.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed that part of it.
Cool. Let's just get into the tail end here. We're going to go through technical stuff now.
Yep.
This is going to be a fun bit. So how did you cope with the technical side of podcasting?
It was a lot of work at the start. Oh, doing.
Talk about your first setup.
Okay, so the first setup, I pretty much went all out and bought. I don't want to talk about other companies who I've used in terms of like Rode and stuff, but the mixer and stuff I thought was really important. So the very first time I did it, I recorded through my PC. I had the two mics plugged in, USB mics, and went from there. That's how I first started out in my room upstairs in the spare room. That worked fine, but it just the crisp quality wasn't there. And actually, I'll start again because that's not how I first started. I started on my iPhone. All right, I'll start again. Starting out obviously was a tough thing to do. I didn't understand where it was going. At the very start, I was reviewing articles on Herald Sun. So that's how I first started on my iPhone. So I had it set up here on a mount. I'll talk about some topics that I thought was worthy of being put out in the open and what I thought about a player, touching on those. From then it kind of grew into a half an hour segment from recording on a Logitech webcam from my PC and two USB microphones to growing from that into a YouTube, growing from that to go to YouTube, so I had to like upgrade my cameras, my microphones, and the mixer. So I cleared all that out, got a mixer, got the two Shure microphones, the SM7Bs, which are like the best in the business. I don't care that I'm doing this for you guys. Like I actually really, really love these microphones. I'd use them regardless. And from then it kind of just grew. The podcast industry, obviously you need to have it on all platforms. So I was on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, all those. So I had to make sure that I knew how to sync it all and make it all drop at once and go from there. But it's always a work in progress. You can't be perfect at it. Analytics are things that's something I'm working on now, making sure what time to drop it, when people listen, obviously the time zones. So I'm in Brisbane, so people in Melbourne might be listening on train an hour ahead of me. So I have to make sure that if I upload it at 3 o'clock here, it'll be 4 o'clock in Melbourne, and then all those kind of factors. So I'm still learning the game. I'd love to have some better cameras. I'm using the A6000 at the moment, Sony product, but I'd love to have like the big cameras of like the professionals use. I'd love to use those at one stage and not have to worry about the battery life or if the SD card's going to overflow. So they're things that I'm working on now, but that obviously takes time to get your head around, and I'm still learning.
That's a really awesome response, by the way, Daniel. I think that was gold for me. Yeah. I've been in broadcast a long time. Daniel has as well. My worst stuff ups are still imprinted right here in my brain. I can still remember and feel them. So, what was your worst?
My worst, it was actually one of the episodes that I was most happy about. So I was announcing my contract that I signed a couple extra years. Start again?
You need to frame it.
Okay.
Frame the question.
Okay. Yeah. Probably the biggest stuff up in terms of what I've done personally on the podcast or something that I forgot to do, and I'm sure it's happened to everybody, is pressing record on the mixer. That's the one thing. I had the media crew around here. I had 7AFL. I had a couple other broad, Channel 10 were around here filming. So I was a bit off put by what was happening. I never really have an audience. And I just forgot to press record on the mixer itself to record the audio. So I don't care if the cameras don't work, if I forget that. But the main thing was the audio, and I didn't press record. So did the whole episode. It was probably the best ones I've done for a long time. And then I've gone to listen back to it, and it wasn't there. So that was a little bit embarrassing, but that hasn't happened to me only. Dylan Buckley actually came to my hotel the night before I played GWS. I was like, yeah, you know what, mate, I'll look after you. Come through, we'll do an episode. It won't be too long. Hour went through, we had some absolute gold, and he did the same thing. He didn't press record on the mixer, and we had to start all over again. So he felt pretty ashamed, and I thought it was funny, but I didn't tell him that I've done it before too, so I let him lose that battle. But that's the biggest stuff up I've done in terms of the podcast, is not pressing record. So bang, front of my mind every time, I don't care, press that red button. That's a good time to go.
Do you have that's a pressing record? That's a classic.
That's just, yeah.
That's a small one. That's okay.
Yeah, I haven't said anything. Because I can't really stuff up, because every episode I record, I send to our club, and so they got a ticket off as well. So if anything goes through the club and they don't appreciate it, or they think that might not be great news for... I'll start again. So I can't really stuff up too bad, because every time that I record an episode, I send it to the club. Our media manager listens to it, and our GM listens to it. So I don't give away any inside information or knowledge of our game plan, or talk about things I probably shouldn't put out in the public. So I don't feel too uneasy about recording an episode and then sending it to them, because they'll just let me know from their experience that I probably shouldn't release that just yet, for the backlash I might get in terms of I'm a player. I don't want to go touching on those things. So it slipped up one time last year when I was doing my live streaming on a game. Have my small community. Sometimes I forget about who's watching. Obviously, a few journos were in my stream under a fake account, I guess, and asking some questions about a certain player, and I answered that question with a bit of tongue-in-cheek motion, and went viral. So you live and learn. You little reminders along the way, but it's all fun and games, and as long as I don't cross the line too much, I think that's fine.
Perfect. So, favorite episode or guest that you've had, and can you tell us a bit why?
Favorite guest would have to be, I don't want to put them down because I've had a few on there, but something on your iPads.
Sorry, is that just the...
It just started.
The Zoom meeting? Might just need to leave and re-enter.
Can you make me the host, because I should have I've got an unlimited account.
You are the host at the moment, so should that affect it?
If it doesn't, what I'll do is I'll call you back, Rifky,
Yep.
Oh, sweet.
and I'll see Daniel. But let's just go with the 9 minutes and see if we can link the interview in 9 minutes.
All right, sweet.
Fair enough.
Yep.
So your favorite
Favourite episode, yep. Yeah, so I think my favourite episode, or we'll start with the guests, would have to be, and I don't want to tread on any toes and say I don't love all my guests, but a close friend of mine, Eddie Betts, he came on a couple of years ago and we got to touch on some things that I probably didn't know myself that I knew about him, and some effects that racism that was going on at the time in the sport that I didn't actually know too much about, that he opened up to me, and I felt like little things along the way of these podcasts, when you feel like someone's opening up and talking to you that he's had like a million interviews before and he probably wouldn't have talked about it. So those little things that you get from someone, it makes me feel like I'm doing something pretty cool and something that makes someone feel comfortable enough to talk about. So that was probably one of my better ones that I enjoyed. Obviously he's a close friend of mine and great bloke as well, but that was really cool. Favorite episode was definitely the most memorable one because it was a contract extension that I was talking about, that it was so exciting times for me to announce that way as well on my podcast and give that a pump up, and to stuff up the episode at the same time was actually a very funny moment for me. So that was one of my highlights.
Brilliant. That's really two really cool examples. Thanks for sharing those. Especially the Eddie Betts one.
Yeah.
More relevant, right? Going on, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
So what do you find the most challenging part about producing a podcast? Is it the organising? Is it trying to get guests in? Is it ideas? Is it the tech? What's the most challenging part for you?
The most challenging part for me to produce a podcast, be the host, is obviously the editing part as well. So I'll take about an hour to record of content, and then I'll have to go home and edit it all myself. So I've just recently employed someone to do that for me. So after this will be my last one doing it by myself, and then I'll flick it off to someone else who can do all that for me, sync it up, do the graphics, slide transitions, and make it look really, really proper. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But just myself and the position I'm in, I'm still learning about what I can and can't talk about in terms of being an AFL player and having that opinion on some things. I don't want to tread on any toes or bring any negative feedback back onto the club that I play for. So that's always touch and go for me. And obviously just being in Brisbane and my schedule, so I can't leave Brisbane to go interview someone that I really want to in Melbourne or Sydney, who might be a hot topic that week that I know I can get on the podcast and talk with. So that's always tough for me. And that's pretty much about it. Like getting away from Brisbane to interview people and the time it takes to put an episode together.
Perfect. We'll move on to the next question, and this is we're going to have about two more to go. I think this is the last one. So let's geek out here. Tell us about your setup, your current setup. Explain to us, what you've got in there.
Okay.
And why you.
Well, I'll start with the gaming component. Behind me, now I don't want to give out too many shout outs to other companies, but all up it's probably about 10 grand's worth. The two monitors, obviously 240 hertz monitors I got there for my gaming and my recording. The Sony a6000, which is the camera with a new lens on there that makes me look pretty on camera, which is really hard to do, so that's obviously very valuable. I've got the Elgato Stream Deck with all my buttons that I can press to cut to camera angles, cut to scenes. I can mute the microphones that way or highlight text in chat. I just recently purchased the Go Alexa. That's audio mixer for my PC. That's really, really good. Obviously that can record my voice and play back some certain things I want to, change all the levels of the microphones, the audio, the game sound, the Discord chat sound, absolutely everything. My system is pretty much operated off that. The PC itself, Chancey, man, I'm recording. No, just go in your room. Chance, come on, come back after. Chancey, stop. No. And I'll move on to the PC itself. That's set up by M-Wave. It's a $5,000 they gave me to spend on their website, which is amazing. I had dual PCs for recording, but I found that the audio component was too hard for my brain to gather. I I probably had stuff up every day trying to figure out how to connect that one to that PC, that PC. So that was done with me. I couldn't do that. So they looked after me handsomely. The Elgato lights, which are a really nice feature. On the desk that goes up and down, so I can record both ways, which is really cool, standing or sitting. That's about it. But we'll get on to the nitty gritty parts. The Shure SM7B, which I've been using for the whole time for about 2 years now. That is the crispest mic, and everyone still today, like every time I'm streaming, they talk about how good the microphone is. But unfortunately, I had to put that in the podcast room with the other two of those. And thankfully, Shure, you guys, actually props to you guys for bringing out the MV7. That is probably one of the best USB mics I've had. I've had the Rode NT USB. This one is way better than that. No offense to Rode, but you can use the XLR cable as well, which is really, really nice feature of it. So you can use both. So you can carry it around with your laptop if you're traveling. You don't need to carry the audio mixer with you. You can plug it straight into your laptop. I know a lot of people out there are using Zoom calls with their USB mics. This one is the one. It's about $300 to $400, but it's all worth that for sure. So I do give a shout out to you guys for that. And that's about it. Obviously got the PS5 there. And that's about it. Yeah, that's a pretty handy setup in someone's cinema room that I've been kicked out of every room in the house. So this is where I'm stationed right now.
Say, I'm geeking out too. Geez, that's a pretty impressive setup.
Yeah, I would say it pays the bills, but it doesn't just yet.
The Elgato switches are pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
Daniel, that's kind of like you're there. Daniel, do you want to get any specifics out of that you feel like? We talk about the Shure 7SMB, yeah?
Yeah, we spoke about that. You spoke about it in your podcasting setup as well, which was nice. Yeah, I think it's been really great responses. I think that's got a really good mixture of. I got one more left. Yeah.
Cool question. I'd love to. I think we should finish off this last one.
Do one more. Yeah, and we'll have a bit of a wrap up, and then we're done. We've got 2.5 minutes.
Of course, let's do this. What are your plans for? This is actually. What are your plans like for the podcast? Is there any exclusives you can share with us? Is there anything that's about to come up? Let us know.
Yeah, so my plans for the podcast going forward is I've kind of signed a deal with Telstra, who have kind of backed the podcast to go forward, who've invested some sums so I can afford to get these products in, make it look flash, got a studio space. So that's something that's pretty big. But the guests I'm getting on this year are probably, I wouldn't say are better than the last ones because last one's been great, but this year, 2021, I've been saving up my guest bank, and we've got a few big name cricketers on there. We've got ex-NFL player who's coming on. We've got a lot of footy players in terms of new recruits to Brisbane. So it's all kind of starting to fall into place. I'm going off not going off other podcasts I've been watching, but I find that I like to delve into more conversation with athletes, not just talking about AFL itself, just getting to know them and what makes them spark and their journey and where they've been from. So we've got some big guests this year. It couldn't be possible without the new microphones. Obviously, that's the number one thing you need in the podcast game. But as soon as I retire, I've got a plan in place to take it to bigger steps, and that's what I'm most excited about. So if footy doesn't work out, I'm not worried. I'm ready to go. Nailed it.
Nice one. Yeah, I think there's some really good responses there. Some personal insights, the tech side of it, the personal stories about the your challenges with putting it together. I think that's great. Is there anything else, Michael, from if you're cutting it point of view that you might want, or?
No, I don't think so. I think we really look. It's got there's aspects of the genuine story. It's relatable. We talk about the equipment. We talk about the future and aspirations, and I think it's all there.
I think it'll cut together as a really nice little 3-minute little piece.
We got more than 3 minutes there, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and Robert, was there anything that you didn't get out that you wanted to say, or was anything you wanted to express that didn't come out?
That all pretty came out. Like the future, it's hard to talk about because like podcasting is awesome to do, but to grow that you need to like kind of get backed by a big company. Like not you don't really have to, but like to be financial living and make money off it. I think we got kicked out.
they'll join back in at some point.
Mhm.
But we are still recording, so if you want to keep answering that question, you can.
Yeah.
Right, we're back. Well, I'm back, anyways. You're saying, mate, sorry that the saying the upcoming stuff is hard because you don't want to give out too much away. You don't want to
Yeah.
change. It's a bit fluid.
Yeah, it's more so like it's talking about the future plans is also really tough because you want to keep growing it but stay as a genuine podcast, not to interlude and go into a big production team and then it turns away from that. But I always want to keep the fans happy about who I can and can't talk to. Like I love talking to athletes of all kinds and making sure we get a great story out of them and tell them their story as well, not just what they want to hear. So that's kind of what I want to do in the future.
Yeah. And you felt you covered that off?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're happy, mate, I think Michael and I are very happy. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
That's great.
Yeah, when I can get up to Brizzy, I'll take you out for a
Oh,
dinner or something.
we'll have a few beers for sure. It's so hot. I might have a cider. It's that hot up here. We'll have a nice couple of ciders. No, but honestly, on behalf, like I do really appreciate what you guys have been doing. Like I'm not joking. The microphones are fucking that good. And the MV7s are actually really, really crisp too. So you guys are doing great. I appreciate you backing small podcasts like me and Deals. Well, Deals is pretty good now, but we do really appreciate it. So without you guys, it wouldn't be possible. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for the feedback. No
Yeah.
worries. And let's hope we can continue the partnership for a while.
Done.
Take on the world.
I got to get better at those like little interludes and making sure that they know what's going on in the podcast. Like sure, thank you, sure, and stuff. But we'll get there.
Yeah, no problem. And if you whenever you want to handle any of that kind of stuff, let us
Yeah.
know. We can do content, we can do tech, we can do all of it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I really appreciate that.
Oh, sweet.
Rocky, do you mind getting just a few shots of the setup for us in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. Just localizing on the seating area or the general room.
Just kind of go through the things that Mitch talked about. Just
Yeah.
really simple with the gimbal.
Yeah,
Not a problem.
give it a clean up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to see it. Yeah.
Not a
Just a little
problem.
bit of extra stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. There's no porn on there. I think.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
Thanks, mate.
No worries. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Adam, as well.